weeks, I was getting hundreds of emails a day demanding that I resign.
Welcome, Andrew, to the World XP podcast. It's been forever. I think you're the latest in a long line of, hey, it's been forever. Last I checked, we were in high school, and then you turned out to be a pilot. So here you are. Also,
Yes.
Congratulations on your school board. We'll call it an election because they voted for you. The people voted
Thank
for
you.
you, really. But
I appreciate it.
Technically, and it's an appointment. But welcome.
Thank you. As you said, it's been a while. It seems like just yesterday we were roaming the halls of Briar Woods, and now I'm already losing hair and putting on the dad bod. So time is unfortunately flying very fast.
Too fast, isn't it? Also feels like we've kind of lost the last 2 years with COVID.
Yes, unfortunately so.
Yeah, it is quite unfortunate. I think there's couple of different, some people took it and ran with it, and others, I don't know. I think I did both, honestly. Like, we've got the podcast going on, and then also I'm still inside playing FIFA. So
Yeah, I don't think it's appropriate to say I'm thankful for COVID, but there were a lot of things that happened during COVID that would not have happened otherwise. So in my case, I think things worked out the way they were supposed to work out. Like I said, I don't really think I can say I'm thankful that COVID happened, because I don't think that's culturally appropriate at the moment.
No, I don't think anyone's really grateful. Would have been nice if it was just a big snowstorm instead for 2 years. Like we could be grateful for that, maybe.
I hate the winter weather, so I think that would have been just as miserable for me. But
all right.
yeah.
Well, all right. So you went to Purdue. You studied flight. So for those listening, there's two sort of subjects that Andrew he probably will say he's not an expert in the second, but I'm just going to say he is anyways. So he's a commercial pilot, and then he's also been elected to the school board in Loudoun County, which, for those listening who've been paying attention to the news, Loudoun County schools and all sorts have been, we'll say, shit's hit
not
the
shown
fan.
in the greatest light.
Yeah. So we'll go with one, and then maybe if he's got time, if we run out of time, then we can get him back on for the second one. Which one? Let's see. I think since the school board is more current, we can start with that, but we'll go through kind of the background and how you got up to that first. So you
Sure.
want to walk us through kind of after high school, what you did, and then how you ended up where you are now?
Sure. So I graduated from Briar Woods back in 2014, and knew from basically freshman year of high school that I wanted to be a pilot. And so there aren't many schools throughout the country that have a good flight program. Purdue is where I ended up because I wanted a school that had decent sports teams in addition to aviation. I didn't want to just be stuck with aviation 24/7. And so I went to Purdue. Unfortunately, our sports were not the greatest for the 3 years I was there, but it was still a good time. We're good now, so it all works out. But I graduated from Purdue in 2017, and then ended up teaching for Purdue in their flight program for a year to get the hours that I needed to become a commercial airline pilot, which in the US is 1,000 hours. And then in June of 2018, I started training with my current airline based out in DC. And I have been there since. I fly all over the East Coast, Midwest, some international stuff. I don't really like the long haul flying. And so about 3-hour flight time is the limit for me, because then my back starts hurting and I get just kind of fidgety. So graduated Purdue, taught for a year, started training, and then moved back to Loudoun County and saw a need for a fresh perspective in our community. And kind of around the same time, I started reflecting on my time in LCPS and realized that while LCPS likes to pride itself as being one of the top school systems in the area, there are still a lot of negative experiences that our students go through that don't really reach the eyes and the ears of the adults in the school. And so, being the oldest of 5 kids, I really started worrying that a number of the same things that I went through as a student, I was worried that my own siblings were going to go through the same things, because there hadn't been much positive change in certain areas such as mental health and bullying. And so I decided to do the impossible and run for public office as a 23-year-old kid, fresh out of college. Or I guess really I started my campaign when I was 22, so I was even younger. And it was really trial by fire. I had no political experience. It was almost like a spur of the moment decision where I just thought, this is something that I feel like I could do and do well. And so ran in 2018 and 2019, the election was in November of 2019. As I said, it was really just me learning everything from the ground up. I didn't have a political party backing me. I was out knocking doors by myself. I was, delivering things in the mail by myself. A lot of my campaign was self-funded. And unfortunately, that November, the election did not go as planned. But then in August of 2021, the lady who beat me in the election unfortunately passed away. And so there became a vacancy for her seat. And a couple weeks after her passing, I decided to put my name forward and to be considered for the next 14 months of her term, Miss Leslie King. And then there was a process where the 7 of us who put our names forward were questioned by the other 8 members of the school board on a number of things such as literacy, community involvement, vision for the future. And then from there was a public vote right before the next school board election, and I was appointed. And so, it's after the election, the first election back in 2019, I kind of was in a dark area because I really thought I did everything correctly to try to win the election. And so the election day result was a big shock for me, but I had too much, I guess, connection to LCPS to simply just walk away and move across country and try to start over, where I didn't think that was the end of my time trying to contribute to our schools. And so really, I wish that Miss King hadn't passed away and she was still representing the board, but I recognized that there was an opportunity for me to put my name forward again and try to make a meaningful difference in our schools. And so that's kind of where we're at now. I think tomorrow is the 1-month anniversary of my appointment, and my term expires next December 31st, but I will be running for re-election in just under a year next November in the general election for the remaining 1 year. It's going to be a special election for the last year of Ms. King's term.
Gotcha. Well, we'll have to get you back on then, get you some campaign support, all sorts. All right. So for those, and myself included, who have no idea what a school board does or is supposed to, well, we'll say is supposed to be doing, and then we'll say what they're actually doing. What is the job of the school board, assuming that everything is done like, I don't even want to say by the book, but like, what are they supposed to be doing?
What are my responsibilities?
Yes, yes.
So for those who don't know, it's the term school board member kind of varies geographically in a lot of parts of the US. Instead of a school board, it's called a board of education. And so depending on where you are, if you hear of a board of education, that's really the same thing as a county school board. And here in Loudoun, we are in charge of creating the budget for LCPS. And so last year that was right around $1.4 billion, which is almost 70% of the county's, billion with a B. Yes, I don't know how many zeros that is, but it's a very big portion of the budget. It's about 70% of the entire county's budget goes to the schools. We deal with all the policy revision and policy creation. And so every 5 years, we are required to review each and every policy in our entire school system, which there are hundreds of policies. And so we spend a lot of time working on those policies. We deal with the hiring and firing of superintendents. So Dr. Ziegler was hired as superintendent, I want to say back in June was when he was fully hired, after Dr. Williams left back in January. And then we also, our biggest role is to be the eyes and ears, or to be the representative of our community, because they are the eyes and ears of what actually goes on. And so that's not really part of the legal definition of a school board member, but if we are not listening to our constituents and taking their experiences and their thoughts and their viewpoints and creating that into policy, then we really aren't doing in my eyes, we aren't doing our role as a good school board member. And so there are a lot of things that public things that we are in charge of that we decide that we really have no control over. There are a number of things that we have to follow the state of Virginia on. We can't just create our own rules for athletics because we have to follow the BHSL rules. When it comes to mask mandates, there's still Virginia codes which require certain things. And so, yes, we have certain authority over a lot of the decisions that go on in LCPS, but there's quite a bit that the school members can't do. And one of those things is run the day-to-day operations of the LCPS of the school system. So that is the role of Dr. Ziegler as a superintendent, and that is, again, coded by law. And so I know one of the recent decisions that the public wasn't happy with was the vaccine mandate for student athletes in high school. And that was a decision that had no board input whatsoever. That was something that Dr. Ziegler decided on his own, and he had the legal authority to do so without having the board vote on that. So I know the board was getting a lot of emails saying, how could you do this? This is wrong, this, that. And at the end of the day, doesn't matter what we think of it. The only way of changing that would be to fire the superintendent, but we're not going to do that for a single decision that he makes.
Gotcha. So you mentioned a couple of things that I think is interesting. The first is that, so out in Fairfax, I would drive by like some soccer fields where I was training somebody or whatever. There's often these protests about mask mandates and vaccine mandates. And what you said makes me wonder. So I guess the question is really, are people just misinformed then maybe about what you guys can and can't do? And if that's the case, so like when somebody writes you an email saying like how could this decision happen, is there like to be the eyes and ears of the community, kind of like you were saying, is there kind of a trying to formulate this in the right way, is there kind of if he's to make this decision about we'll say the student athlete one, for example, should the protesters be kind of, I guess, aimed at his decision or is there something that you guys can do to be like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this because all of the parents who have elected us are not very happy with that?
So yes and no. There are, like I said, at the end of the day, we have the authority to fire and rehire any superintendent who we seem fit. And so if the board as a whole is not happy with Dr. Ziegler's performance, that is something that we can take control of.
Outside of that, because that's kind of drastic to do for one thing.
Right. And there are, I suppose we can express our concerns to Dr. Ziegler. We can have an informal, kind of a straw poll saying, the board is not in favor of this decision that you made, and kind of try to explain differing viewpoints and kind of push back a little bit for certain decisions that he makes. But like I said, at the end of the day, in terms of Virginia law, he is granted the authority to do certain things. And yes, there are residents in Loudoun who email him directly and during public comment will yell at him directly for decisions that he makes. But then we also do get I've gotten a number of emails demanding that we fire Dr. Ziegler for a number of issues that have happened in the last couple of weeks. And at the end of the day, I need to ensure that my vote to keep him or not keep him is based on actual data and facts, and not just based on emotion, because unfortunately there's been a lot of misinformation being spread around, and I can't make a knee-jerk reaction on a major decision such as firing or voting to fire a superintendent, because qualified individuals for that position are hard to come by. And again, I need to make sure that I'm not just listening to a vocal minority or reading misinformation in the news and make my decision based on that. And so I guess I could see the anger coming to us and Dr. Ziegler, because at the end of the day, we control his job, but we also need to respect that there is a legal divide between our roles and his role.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And if I struggle to formulate questions, I'm trying to wade through the sort of relationship in my head between the state and you guys and him, and kind of how it all ties together. Because so for like people are upset with the mask mandates as well, but if that's a state function, that's not even Dr. Ziegler's function, nor yours. But people just seem to be upset generally about a lot of different things. And it makes it difficult when I think I feel like the school board is an easy target to throw anger at.
I was going to say the same thing. We are very accessible. We are more accessible than our representatives down in Richmond, historically, or even Congresswoman Wexton here in Loudoun. And so It's easy for us to become just a scapegoat for a lot of decisions. And, there are things that the board has passed over the last couple of years that I wouldn't have supported. But at the end of the day, I need to recognize that I'm one vote. In order to make change, I need to get 4 others to go along with me. And so with that comes compromise and recognizing that it can't be my way or the highway, because nothing would ever get done that way. And so, yes, we are, I would say, the easiest to go after for a lot of these decisions.
Gotcha. Is that hard? Well, so you've been in it for a month tomorrow, but has that proven difficult for you in terms of kind of, you get this email and you want to like bash your head against the wall because it's not your like you didn't do it, or the responsibility doesn't lie with the school board, or like somebody else made the decision and you have no control over it. Does that happen to you, or has that been happening to you?
It's my first 2 weeks. I was getting hundreds of emails a day demanding that I resign for things that happened months ago that I had nothing to do with. And so
good.
For a couple of weeks, it was kind of just in that comical phase where it was kind of funny how people were so uneducated that they were making demands for things that they really didn't fully understand. And then a lot of the emails I was receiving were from people out of state, and even people who weren't even in the US. I remember one email from someone over in the UK who said that she is so glad that her daughter's not in American schools because we're a disgrace, and if we were in the UK, we'd all be in jail. And I didn't respond, because there's nothing
to say to somebody.
There's nothing to say there, but I just wanted to say, like, well, good thing we're not in the UK, because it's just it's mind-boggling. And some of the emails have been very eye-opening. I received one saying that they were going to come to our houses and drag us into the street and teach us a lesson, with a lot of expletives, mixed in there. And that's just like, it's no wonder our kids are struggling so much with their mental health when this type of behavior is done by adults. It's like, who in their right mind would say that to someone who, one, they've never met, and two, just like hide behind an email and do it. It's unfortunate that that's where we've got to as a society. And like I said, I guess I can't be too surprised that a lot of our kids are struggling with harassment and bullying, because if adults are doing it, then kids are going to do it too.
Yeah, it's very easy to just hide behind the screen or behind the keyboard and say those sorts of things. So I want to get back to those emails in a little bit, but how do we sort of teach people educate people on what actually is your responsibility, what you can control, what you can't control, to kind of, and okay, this is the superintendent's decision, this is Richmond's decision, this is Richmond being the state government. How do we get that sort of information out there? Because I've not been paying very much attention. So, but for people who live there and have children in the schools that kind of don't really understand how it all flows together, how do we get that sort of information out there to those people so we can have a more, I'll say, peaceful relationship between kind of you guys and the constituents, and more because at the end of the day, we want the goal should be for all the kids to go through school and have a good education and to feel like they belong and all these things. But it seems like that's not what's going on. So how do we get that sort of information out there so we can all come together for that, well, what should be the goal?
If you have an answer to that, or if anyone who's watching this has an answer to that, please email me, because I would love to know the answer. Unfortunately, we as a society are very uneducated when it comes to government operations in the different branches. I think I could go out to the street today and ask 100 people just at a grocery store if they can name their elected officials, or even the roles of a lot of the county administrators, such as the treasurer or the clerk of the court or commissioner of the revenue or Commonwealth attorney. And really the only one that they could really say a solid definition for would be the sheriff, because that's kind of just one of the straightforward ones where everyone knows what the sheriff does. But when you don't even know the roles and the responsibilities of the people, such as the treasurer or the commissioner of the revenue, Yeah, you may know who that person is, but it's really, it boils down to just a lack of education, people not wanting to put in that effort, because it's very easy to just show up on election day and just get a printout of all the Democrats running or all the Republicans running and just vote straight down the ballot. And so until there's a shift that encourages people to actually do their own reading and research, I don't know a good way, because I feel where we're at today as a society is people will believe what they want to believe, and they'll find a news source that tells them that matches what they want to believe. And so, I can come out there and say, hey, I can respond to these emails and saying, hey, this is not my decision. And those people will just be all angry because they think that I'm trying to hide something, or I'm not doing my job properly. And so thankfully there's a decent portion of the community who is well-informed, they're well-educated, they are level-headed. But there are people on both sides who just, they have their blinders on. They don't want to believe anything other than, what their media source of choice is feeding them or telling them.
Yeah, don't disagree at all with anything you said. For those, we'll give people the benefit of the doubt. And for those that do want to know, is the information accessible, very easily accessible? Is it on like the Loudoun County government website or something like that?
In terms of like the roles and responsibilities of the various elected officials, yes, you can get. I know this goes against everything that we were taught in high school, but Wikipedia has a lot of good information on the roles of a lot of these elected positions, and so it varies from county to county. Not every county has the same term or the same occupation as every other county. Loudoun is a very big county, and so we have a lot of different roles. If you go out to Southwest Virginia and one of these rural counties with 1,000 residents, you're not going to have all these different roles and responsibilities. But there are a lot of nonprofit websites out there that are dedicated to just making kind of the political process more open and accessible and honest. And so there are a lot of good, in my opinion, non-biased media sources out there. You just need to know how to find them, and not just go to your favorite section of your browser and click on CNN or Fox News or some of the other far more polar sources out there.
Yeah, well, go look it up, people, and stop yelling at the school board.
Yes, some things are all our fault, but not everything.
Only yell at them if it's their fault.
Yep, exactly.
So just going back to the emails, you mentioned you want to reply and say it's not your decision. Have you ever replied to those, or do you just mostly just ignore them?
I would say it's a mix of both. And I remember I did respond to one, and I said something along the lines of, "Are you aware that I was not appointed until 2.5 weeks ago and had nothing to do with this decision?" And I actually did get a response apologizing for lumping me in, because a lot of people will just send an email to the entire board and not recognize that I am new. Like I said, a lot of people are from out of state, so they Google Loudoun County School Board, see my name listed, and automatically assume that I'm one of the bad guys. And so, some people are able to admit that they're wrong and apologize. Other people will. I ended up getting blocked on Facebook because I responded to someone yelling at me for, I don't remember what it was. I'm legally not allowed to block anyone from my social media pages because it's a public page, and so. I always tell myself, oh, don't respond, it's not worth it. But then occasionally some of the claims that they're saying are just so ridiculous that I want to be like, are you serious? And this one person, I guess I found enough holes in his argument that he was frustrated, not that he was blocked me. So,
that's a win for
but
you.
Again, that person was from Tennessee. So I think I brought up the fact, I don't remember what I said, because it was just his points were just so far out there. And I tend to respond to the comical ones, things that I think are just so ridiculous.
Be careful with that. Sooner or later you'll get too many, and then you'll be in over your head.
I will. I mean, I get there's this one person who lives out in Lovettsville who she will send us the same email word for word 50 times a day, and I just have a filter in my email inbox. So any email that comes from her just goes straight to trash, because it's just yelling at us. It's really things that don't even make sense. She uses caps lock quite a bit, which really detracts from her statement. And like I said, it's just word for word the exact same thing 50 times a day, every single day. I will say though, she ends every email saying best and then her name, so at least she ends it on a positive note after yelling at us for 2 paragraphs. But I mean, it's just, and I will say there are thousands of parents and constituents here in Loudoun who are very level-headed. They care deeply about the education, and we are able to have some very meaningful conversations. I've had 3 town halls already where we've had there have been some very vocal people who didn't want to hear anything else, who have come, but we've had a number of very good, deep, meaningful conversations. And that's, I would say the majority of the county is like that, but unfortunately they kind of get drowned out from the vocal critics on both ends of the political spectrum. And so, I don't want to imply that Loudoun is full of crazy people. But like I said, there are people on both sides who just, I don't know how to say this nicely, but
no, we all know they are. What
yeah,
they are.
I don't think I need
to
go further with that. But yes, there are plenty of level-headed people in Loudoun, and I really enjoy having those types of conversations with constituents, even if I don't agree with them. It's as their representative, I've made clear that I can't commit to voting the way they want me to vote 100% of the time, because I think that's unrealistic for any representative to promise. But what I can promise is that their voice will be heard and their perspective will be heard, regardless of whether or not I vote the way that they want. And so people have been happy with that response. They're happy that they feel that they're getting heard, because that's something that they just didn't feel like they had for a very long time, was a voice.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense, for sure. So I want to jump into like the real life version of these emails now. And so maybe
I mean, these are all public. These are all public emails. So any email that gets sent to me, every text message that I send is a public record. And so if you wanted to, you could request any one of my emails, and that is public knowledge. And so, I mean, like, these are all the emails from that one lady where it's just the same thing.
Quite in the screen, but yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So it's like I said, it's
no, it's all good.
Yeah, it's a mess.
So there were several school board meetings that went into the national news for reasons that we won't get into here due to legalities and stuff. But were those before you were on the school board?
Yes. Yep. So the ones where people were actually arrested, those were back in June of 2021, and I was appointed in October.
Were you weren't there, were you?
No.
Okay. So have there been any we'll call it rowdy ones since you've been appointed, and the reason why I ask is because, aside from the obvious reasons, but I've heard several accounts of different meetings, not just the one in question where people were arrested, but where there were protesters and the school board shut down the meeting for whatever reason. Has the sort of like the vitriol remained from the parents in that way, like in the most recent school board meetings, or has it kind of calmed down a little bit?
So I obviously am indoors in the admin building for the meetings, and so I don't know what goes on outside in the parking lots. I do know that there are rallies for which every school board meeting. I know this past board meeting there was a rally hosted by Loudoun Education Association, and they were supporting collective bargaining for all teachers and staff members. But then there was also a rally for Fight for Schools, which is a parent-led organization who has a lot of topics that they typically address as a parent group. And they're the ones who kind of leading the charge for the recall letters or the recall campaigns and petitions for the other school board members. In terms of the actual indoor portion of the meetings, I mean, we get yelled at during public comment for an hour and a half every 2 weeks. But currently people are not allowed indoors during public comment session. I hope that changes for our next meeting, because I don't support keeping people out in the cold, especially with winter quickly approaching.
Sure.
But that has led to a little bit more civility because people aren't in the boardroom during public comment. But people are angry, they're frustrated, they don't feel like they are getting the truth or the full truth. And so, I can't fault them for being frustrated and stressed. And, many of them do have very valid concerns. And that's, I've been able to address a lot of concerns already, but there's just so much. I mean, it's too much for me to do on my own, especially as a brand new board member where I'm still trying to learn the ins and outs and go out and visit the schools in my district to make relationship with principals and the staff members and the students. I'm going to Broad Run tomorrow for the first time. I was at Briar Woods yesterday for the first time. That's just the first 2 schools of 25 to 30 in my district. And I'm already a month in and just haven't had a chance to really do anything else because it's just been, I've been slammed.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've seen some of the videos of some of the speeches, what does everyone get, was it 90 seconds or whatever, or 2 minutes,
60,
60 seconds?
Yeah.
So I've seen some of the ones, a couple went viral. I think one from, what's his name? Matt Walsh, I think his name is. But that
was before my time.
Yeah, so it was before you as well. So when you inevitably get one that goes viral again, what is sort of, so I guess the question from the parents would be okay, so now we're you're saying that they're being heard, but it's now at what can actually be done about the concerns? What would be the process for, we'll say policy X, XYZ, policy XYZ that needs to get, that people feel very strongly about, but the school board has maybe not supported, and the parents want it to pass. What's the process for getting something passed from public support, and what sort of considerations go into forming a new policy or changing an existing one?
So in order for anything to pass, you need 5 board members to support it. And so that is a majority. We're a 9-person board. Now, when it comes to considerations, there are quite a bit of stakeholders who we need to address: students, parents, staff members. But then also we have our division counsel, who is our attorney. They're at every board meeting, who we're able to ask questions and get his input on whether or not this matches Virginia code, whether this matches any federal laws or codes that we have to follow, or even county ordinances. And so it's not as simple as just making a policy and calling that a day. There's a lot of stakeholders who need to be addressed before anything gets put or passed by us, because if we just scramble and pass a very hastily written policy, that could lead to a lot larger issues down the road.
And so when you consult, we'll say consult with these stakeholders, what sorts of inputs are you looking for? Especially given so you've got the parents. We could say that they've made their voices heard by yelling at everyone. All right, I should not generalize. So you got the parents, you've got the teachers as well, and then the students, and the lawyer that's at you got your lawyer or counsel. What sort of inputs are you looking for from those people to determine the ins and outs? Because every little policy has a nuance that maybe somebody might like and somebody else might not like, and so you've got to kind of come to a compromise with a lot of those things. So how does that all work out? If you're gonna go through, you're okay, we got this policy and we need to talk to the whoever, but then you get to writing it, and when it gets towards the end, I would assume you don't really go back to the parents. So how's that the the sausage making process? Like, how does that work?
So it's typically the policy start out in committee, which we have quite a few committees from finance and operations, communication outreach, discipline, student services. And so similar to our US Congress, that is just a smaller portion of board members. So for us, it's 3-person per committee. And then we also have staff contacts. So for me, I'm the chair of the finance and operations committee, and Sharon Willoughby, who is I'm going to butcher her official title here. She's basically in charge of all the finance for the county, or for LCPS. And so she is there, as well as some of her staff members, to provide input and guidance on certain policies or more information on how things are done. And so if we wanted to pass a policy that was related to finance, it would start in committee. We talk about it, get input, draft a policy, get more staff input from it. Then we come back to us as committee members. And then if we vote for that to go to the full school board, then it would go to the full board for what's called an information item, where it's just introduced to all of us. And then at our next board meeting, then it'll likely 9 times out of 10, it'll go up for vote. And if it passes that, then then it's full policy. But they could also vote to send it back to committee, which would send it right back to the smaller committees, the finance and operations committee, to iron out some of the concerns. Now, we also have a number of committees that we rely on to provide feedback, such as SEAC, MSAC, and Equity Committee. So SEAC is the Special Education Advisory Committee, MSAC is Minority Student Academic Achievement Committee. And so we have a number of these community organizations that are made up of community members. And that's where we get a lot of good input from policy, because they do meet monthly. They are able to provide more of the knowledge representing certain communities. Like I said, the SEAC Committee, Special Education Advisory Committee, their input and perspective is very important, because a lot of times the students who are in a special education program can't speak up for themselves. And so if we don't listen to the input of the special education TAs and teachers and deans and the parents, then we're not doing everything that we can do to ensure that the policy is good for our special education students and even teachers. And so that's kind of just a brief rundown of who we look to, but then also the sausage making, as you said, process of it all.
Gotcha. So is there a better time where maybe to not use a special education one as the example, because I want to get back to that in a little bit, but where it goes to, like, obviously it won't go to like a full vote with all the parents and stuff, but is there somewhere where they're informed that this is in the process of being worked on, thoughts, comments, concerns, etc.?
Yep. So every one of our agendas is required to be public per Virginia law. And all of our meetings are live streamed and posted on lcps.org. And so any parent, if they wanted to, could follow along and watch all of our committee meetings and see everything that is brought up. A lot of people don't. They just pay attention to the overall big board meetings. But a lot of times that's too late, because all of the ins and outs and minor details have already been addressed in the committee. And so if they want, and all of our meetings have options for public comment. So if someone feels strongly about a certain policy that is being proposed, they can very easily come to our committee and share their thoughts. We don't get a lot of people do that. But we do take input throughout the entire process.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That's good to know, because from my outside understanding of kind of what's going on, I feel like people think that they don't have a chance to do that. So that's really good to know.
Plenty of chances. It's just people are busy. I can't.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I want to get to the special education part real quick. Well, might not be real quick. I was requested to, well, that's not true. So the special education portion, obviously, for those who've been following the podcast, I had a special education attorney on. and it was interesting to get his perspective because it feels like there's a disconnect between the, I'll say, the teachers slash administration and the special education sort of attorneys and that side. And so when you hear his perspective, like he's a very reasonable person, you're like, yeah, all this makes sense. So why is it not happening? Is often the question that came up in my head. And I understand there's considerations with budgets, right? Like there's only so much money to go around. Teachers are, I don't know if they're quitting. I've heard they're quitting, but I don't know if that's actually the case. And then there's only so many, like, there's only so much that can go around for one kid, as harsh as that might sound. It's just, I feel like the reality of the situation for the people that are running the day-to-day operations of the school. So if you, I guess, just share your thoughts on the situation a little bit.
Sure. So I am actually the school board representative for SEAC, Special Education Advisory Committee. And so it's an area that I have to admit that I was not, really still am not too familiar with, because there's just so much, there's so many different aspects of it. And our students with IEPs, individualized education plans, is continuing to grow. I mean, I think we're up to almost 10,000 students with IEPs now. And so it's over 10% of our student body here in LCPS. And a lot of the concerns I've been talking with our SEAC president, and I've had one call with her already. I have another call coming up here soon with a number of her concerns. They really just feel that they're kind of the redheaded stepchild, that they are proposing meaningful policies and changes, but they just are not getting the type of response from the county that they would hope. And so I know there's a bit of a rocky relationship between SEAC and our county, and I think that's true with a number of jurisdictions here in the state of Virginia and probably countrywide. But to answer your question as to why things aren't happening the way they're supposed to, I wish I had a good answer for that. But to me, it's just as shocking.
Not even like why are things not, because we can all speculate on that. Probably for each kid there's a different and unique reason why. Mm. But just from the standpoint of, again, like I was saying earlier, the goal should be kind of, or you want the kid to get the best education that they can. And I would hope and pray that if somebody's working in education that's not their goal, like, well, that we can, for the purposes of this conversation, we can kind of like throw those people out, because that's not really who I'm talking about. If everyone has the same goal, there's got to be like a disconnect somewhere, because, and I'm probably not the person to do this, but it seems like there needs to be a conversation to be had between, like, maybe I don't really know, I don't really know. I've just heard things from both, like, the teacher side. They're like, we have too many students, like we have too many this, like we don't have enough resources, we don't have enough this. And like the attorneys who are like, well, the kids should be getting this because it's in their plan. It's like, yes, both are true. So like, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't buy the belief or the phrase that people say that, oh, there's not enough room in the budget. Our budget is $1.4 billion. There's plenty of room for everything. It's just a matter of priorities. And special education, to be frank, just has not been a priority for many for a very long time. And so is it a lack of resources? We're short on special education teachers, I can tell you that much. I mean, I think we got an update today on staff vacancies, and I don't remember off the top of my head the exact number, but we have a number of vacancies. And so that is placing a strain on teachers. Not every school can offer the same type of special education program. And so there are a number of schools where they can only offer certain parts, for whether it's autism or, it's hearing impaired or blind students. It's not like we can have those types of programs at every single school just because of, we need to be, I don't know the proper way of saying it, but we need to be responsible with our resources and recognize that if, we only have one student in each category at every school. That doesn't make sense to have a program just for them at every school, so it's some of it, I can recognize the fact that, not every school needs to have the same type of program, but we need to ensure that we're doing what we can to actively recruit and retain these teachers, because it's a very hard to fill position. And it's a position that it's a very tough job. It's not, our special education teachers really have to be on their A game 100% of the time. And it's a very tough position to fill with subs, because those who don't have the experience, you can't just take a random sub and put them in a very low functioning special education classroom and expect things to be done properly, just because they don't have the training, they don't have the relationship with the students already. And so, our sped teachers are worn out, they're overworked, they feel underappreciated. And unfortunately, where we're at right now as a country, it's just a very tough to fill position. I don't know if throwing more money at the problem would fix it. I think it might fix some of it, but at the end of the day, we also need to build a relationship between our special education community and the county, because like I said, it's a very broken relationship currently.
Yeah. And if the people who, you guys know who you are, if I've misrepresented what you said in any way, please let me know, because that was not the intention at all. I'm sure. Yeah, just let me know. And then maybe I can shoot a question to you later and maybe get people an answer. But yeah, no, it's one of those where it's like there doesn't seem to be there's not an easy solution, and so this kind of is difficult because there's so many things to take into account that makes it hard to
right,
especially if somebody feels, but like if you feel passionately about it, like, well, why don't you just do this? It's like, well, because that would do something else to that problem over there. Like, geez. Are teachers leaving? Are teachers quitting? Have you guys been noticing that?
Yep. I can actually give you an exact number, because we got that information today. We get that weekly. Let's see, we get a hiring kind of breakdown in terms of resignations and retirements. So this past week, we lost 5. The week before, we lost 9. The week before that, we lost 17. The week before that, we lost 13. And so, so far, this, and that's just in resignations. Retirements, we've lost 3 this past week. So it's since July 1st, we've had 60 retirements and 246 resignations. Now, not all of that are teachers. We have difference between licensed employees and classified employees. And so about a little more than half of those are classified, which, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, janitors. But, we've lost 96 licensed employees, and those are typically the teachers since July. So yes, short answer.
Geez, I didn't realize it was that much, because is that countywide or just your district?
That's LCPS. Okay. And so currently at the elementary level, we have 48 vacancies, including 22 special education vacancies, 9 school counselor vacancies. Middle school, we have 18 vacancies, 5 of which are special education. High school, we have 30 vacancies, 10 of which are special education, 3 of which are school counselors. So like I said, we just have so many, and it's overall, we have 37 special education vacancies.
So
I wish I had better data to share, but
no, I mean, that's good as it is. Like those
at.
numbers are super shocking to me. And I'm at the portion now where I've not run out of questions, but the questions that I want to ask, I feel like have no answers. And so like, I feel like we're both aware of that, but so is it, what do you think it is? Do you think is the COVID, is is it the like vaccines and mask stuff, or is it just the Zoom teaching, or is it a combination of all of them, or is it not getting paid enough, or kind of all of the above? Really, like, what have you been hearing, or have you been hearing things for why they're leaving?
I think it's a mix of everything. We're past the Zoom teachings now, but
Is there any like inkling that is going to go back to that, or are you guys like in person for sure?
so we do offer virtual Loudoun, so we do have a number of courses that are taught just virtually for students who need it. But students need to be in school. I mean,
Yeah.
our testing scores plummeted during COVID. Excuse me.
I'm sure.
And we need to be in school. Point blank. End of story.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's a mix of COVID scares. It's a mix of just the stresses of being a teacher nowadays. I've heard certain teachers not being fans of the direction of LCPS. I think part of it has to do with, vaccine mandates and mask mandates and, that category of issues. But, I don't think there's one general reason why teachers are leaving. It's not just because pay is low. I mean, we're one of the highest paid school systems in the state. But it's just being a teacher right now is not, I mean, people become teachers because they have a calling, they have a desire, they have a passion for it. It's not one of those jobs where it's like, oh, I'll do this for 5 years just to pay the bills, and then go on and do something else that I'll try. It's just not, it's not why teachers become teachers,
Jeez, I've disconnected myself from sort of the schooling world generally.
Now, what I can say to you and everyone else who's watching, if you can think back and remember a teacher who really made a difference for you, just search for them, send them an email, and send them a note of appreciation. Because right now, with the mess that we're in, I can tell you that that'll make a big difference in their day. Whether or not you think they remember you or not, I think you'd be surprised that if they made a difference in your life, you probably made a difference in theirs, and I can tell you that they'll remember you. So, like I said, if you have that one teacher who you can think back and just smile and be like, "Dang, they were great," just shoot them an email, say that you still remember them, you think about them, and you appreciate things that they've done. And like I said, it's small things like that that can make a really bad week turn into a really great week.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, everyone listening, all 20 of you, go do that.
We're going for 25 today, right?
Yeah, we're going for 25. We're going for 25. No, that's a really good point. I hadn't even, like I said, I've basically disconnected myself from almost all of that in general. Just, I have my own thoughts and my own reasons why, but no, that's good. So basically, you just took the next question that I had, which was going to be like, it seems all doom and gloom. Like, are you hopeful? What's sort of your impression of things moving forward?
There is a lot of good that's happening in LCPS right now. And unfortunately, it just doesn't get the attention that all the negative stuff gets. We have, our academies of Loudoun, they just launched a high altitude weather balloon, testing all sorts of different things in the atmosphere. We're having great success in project-based learning, allowing our students to get outside the classroom and do real world things like launching weather balloons, or I know our geospatial sciences classes are really involved in the community, assisting community businesses and organizations with a lot of the mapping and the various data behind things. I know one of our TGS classes went out to a winery to assist with data of grapes, and the town of Leesburg is working with a number of our students to work on like data collection and mapping that sort of area. And so LCPS is still,
as a GIS person, that makes me happy.
I mean, I am tackling some GIS issues right now because the software that they're using just is not really compatible with every student's Chromebooks. But I'm not going to get into the weeds on that. No, but there's LCPS is still one of the top school systems in the state, if not the country. And so to focus on just all these negative things is short-sighted. And I have to force myself sometimes to look at the positives, because it is very easy to just read all the negative stories and be like, dang, you know, where do we go wrong as a county? I'm not saying we're perfect, because by no means are we even close to that, but we have a lot of dedicated teachers, a lot of dedicated principals and staff members, dedicated parents, dedicated students. And Loudoun is, I mean, there's a reason why I still live here in Loudoun. You know, I know a lot of people from Briar Woods have moved on and explore other parts of the world, but I mean, I do this pilot for work, but you know, for me, there's nowhere else I see myself being right now. And so my role is to try to make a difference, to kind of fix the issues that are going on. But at the end of the day, we're still a great place. We're still rocking and rolling.
Yeah, for sure. So how do we get the over the hump, I guess? How do we get sort of out of the weeds of all the negativity that's going on? How do we get past that? Because I know parents are still very unhappy by it. I think, what was the term called? I think they coined it like Chardonnay Antifa, like all this other stuff that's like going on.
I
Like,
haven't heard that one. That's
I don't know. I forgot who coined it, but I heard it and I
yeah,
chuckled. But
and
how do we
I
get
get
how do we get out of all this? Because if everyone is still like yelling at each other, we're like, nobody's ever going to figure out that we just launched a weather balloon, or no one's ever going to figure that out. So how do we get through this? How do we get through this?
So that's part of the reason why I have remained independent and have denied party endorsements the entire time, because I feel we are divided as a county, we're divided as a community, we're divided as a country. And it's to the point where a lot of people don't want to talk to their neighbors who have different viewpoints. And back to the ways of life where you can look at your neighbor, you can look at a friend and disagree with them on 50% of topics or ideas, and still recognize that you can have meaningful friendship with them. And unfortunately, I just don't feel that we really have that cohesiveness right now. And so part of my goal is to kind of bridge that divide that our community is facing, and kind of bring people back together and encourage them to have these deep conversations with people with differing views. And like I said, I've had 3 town halls already, and we've been able to have a lot of these deep conversations. And, you know, even if people don't walk out of there with a different viewpoint, you know, at least they've had another perspective shown to them. And, you know, I'm not out trying to enlighten people or open their eyes to the world, but, you know, it's all I can do is try to facilitate that discussion, and hope that you know, it goes back. I think we've each said a couple of times, just come back to compromise. You know, we need to recognize to meet in the middle and not just be pushing for, you know, way over here or way over here. You know, just we all need to recognize that a lot of us have the same common goal, and that's to ensure that our students have the best education that they can get. And yes, there are different views on how we get there, but I think if people actually sat down and took away all the outside political noise, they recognize that they're really not all that far off.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think, speaking for me personally, I hate that it's got to this point, but as like, if my representative, if I felt that they were level-headed and reasonable, even if I disagreed with them, I think that I would be happy at this point. So I think that that's really good that you've kind of taken that first sort of step, and now you're in there, and now you can start talking. Have you got that sort of feedback from a lot of the parents, that even the ones that maybe you disagree with?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at my official Facebook page, 90% of the comments are thanking me for what I consider basic stuff, just being open and listening and having these conversations with parents and standing up for the injustices that they've seen go on for a very long period of time. And so, you know, part of me is like, it's frustrating that I have to be thanked for doing what I think I'm supposed to be doing. But at the end of the day, I'm glad that people are recognizing that, you know, I really am doing my best to make a difference and bring forth meaningful change for the county in the school system.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
But
For
shameless
sure.
plug, Andrew Hoyler, Broad Run District School Board Representative. Find me on Facebook.
There
You'll
he
see all my
goes.
updates there.
Yeah,
I don't know the exact, I mean, it's a pretty long Facebook name, but you just search Andrew Hoyler School Board. You'll find me.
I'll have all the shameless plugs you want. We'll put all that stuff in the description as well. Just send it to me afterwards, and we'll get all that stuff in the description. One last question, because I know you got to go. I wanted to talk to you about the pilot stuff, but I don't feel like we have enough time to really do that justice for all the questions that I have. Like you said, growing up near Dulles, I could ask you a gazillion questions, and I don't feel like we would do it justice. So at some point, we'll get you back on. We'll talk about that stuff. But one, well, maybe last question, if something new doesn't pop into my head. What's next for you? So you're running. You want to run for re-election, obviously, and is that sort of the big thing for you? So like, what's on the sort of school board agenda in the near term future that you're focused on, and then the next couple of years, what you got going on?
So budget season is coming up here very shortly. We had our first introduction to a portion of the budget this past Tuesday. January really kicks off budget season, where it's meetings twice a week, every week for 2 months straight.
And are those live streamed as well, so that
Yep,
people can pop their heads in? Okay, so if you care about the budget, pop your head in. All right, keep going.
Yes, on TV, on online, and you can also go in person if you live in Loudoun. So the budget will be a pretty big, really the main topic for about a 2-month time frame, 2.5 month time frame. And I mean, that's really the big thing on the horizon. It's the big cloud. I mean, it's over pushing $1.5 billion, but we have to be respectful and responsible of, the county's finances. And there's some news articles out there saying that we may see a reduction in revenue from data centers. And so that will play a direct role in the school system budget. And so we might be having some pretty difficult conversations on, hey, how do we cut $50 to $100 million, which sounds like a lot. I mean, it's still kind of a small portion of our budget, but that's even $1 million. Yeah, it's so that's the big thing. I have a lot of. I mean, our budget book is about that thick. We have multiple books, and so it's gonna be a lot of reading. It's very tough for the public to kind of follow along with, because there is just so much. There's so much money, but it's very important because it's their tax dollars. It's their hard-earned money. We need to be respectful and responsible with every penny of that. So that's what's coming on the horizon.
Yeah, and then for you, re-election is
November 2022. I don't know the exact date yet. I haven't officially filed, but I do know that I will be. I mean, bearing some crazy life event, I will be seeking re-election and hopefully just providing some stability for the county. I mean, we've had 4 different school board members in the past 6 years.
Oh, so the Broad Run district has?
Broad Run district, yeah. So it's just been a constant one term, half a term, and I don't want to be just a 14 month. Yeah. So it's like I said, I hope to really provide some stability for the district and hopefully continue to be a good representative. But well, that's up to the voters to decide.
Of course. Well, hopefully it turns out well for you. We'll get you back on around that time, get you some other buzz and stuff, and we'll see what goes on. One thought that popped into my head about the budget stuff. I don't know if you're allowed to do this or not, but actually, I'll mention it to you offline. All right. With that, we'll wrap this up. We've been chatting for about an hour and a half. We got a football game to watch, of course.
Yes, go Dolphins.
Go Dolphins. They're probably better than Washington. I have no idea.
Yeah, not this year, unfortunately.
All right, and we can find your Facebook page is Andrew Hoyler, Broad Run District.
I'm going to get you the official name here because so I had a campaign page, but then when I was appointed, I created a new official page. So it's Andrew Hoyler - Loudoun County School Board Member - Broad Run District.
And that's where we can find all the latest updates for you and the school board and stuff.
Yep. All the latest updates. You got it.
Sweet. We'll get that link in the description. Anything else you want to shameless plug?
No, I think that's about it. I mean, that's basically my life right now.
Sounds good. With that, we'll wrap this up. Really appreciate having you on. I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate what you're doing for those students. I think a fresh perspective and a breath of fresh air would do them some good. So really appreciate that. Keep working at it, and I'm sure all the parents are Well, they're already telling you they're thankful. So
Yes,
keep it
most
up.
are at least.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Nice seeing you again.
Of course, you as well. All right. We will talk to you guys later. Peace.
Peace.